What was unique about the pandemic? Was it that many previously covert interests became temporarily visible, like the recent aurora borealis in Northern Europe? Suddenly, something that is always there became visible to a new population. Hang on a minute, the pharmaceutical industry and the state are operating in conjunction with these unelected bureaucratic bodies in order to centralize authority and generate profit. Is that what it was?
I think there's two things that make the COVID situation somewhat dramatic, at least. I wouldn't say unprecedented, but certainly dramatic, because we can actually make the argument that certainly the establishment of the Commonwealth was the legitimization of the British East India Company, and that company's 86% of its trade was opium. So unambiguously, this is not a new phenomenon. The difference probably is the degree to which the audacity of the direct suppression of civil and human rights was part and parcel of this exercise. And I've seen it, as I've said many times, as a marketing exercise to see exactly how far the complicit population will go before they start pushing back. Because I think that's really what it was. I think this was a market test more than it was a substantive act. And the fact is that the market test was to see how far humans are willing to allow themselves to be caged, curtailed, limited, delimited, everything else. And I think that what we really did was we had a market test on humanity, and humanity came with a, let's just say, not a passing grade.
Have you got any corroborating evidence that indicates or even proves that it was that? Are there
conversations? Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
You only have to go to the Global Preparedness Monitoring Board, look at the decade of vaccines that they published in 2011. They actually said that they were going to do this. They said by 2020, we were going to have a universal acceptance, a universal vaccine mandate across the world on a universal platform. And then in September 18th of 2019, they specifically said that there would be an accidental or deliberate release of a lethal respiratory pathogen. This comes right out of their document, Global Preparedness Monitoring Board, September 18th, 2019. And in that document, they said the purpose of it was so that by September 2020, the world would have a universal vaccine plan. Period. That's not an allegation, that's an accusation, because it's reading right out of their script. So this is not putting the pieces together. This is something basic. I know it challenges a lot of people, but it's called literacy. You just have to read their plan. And if you actually, God forbid, read the words on the page, you actually see that this was nothing but a market test, which is the reason why we have Answer Corporation, ATI, Forsmarsh, and the companies that were involved in the rollout of this pandemic. We have them all setting up the marketing program, which was the launch of Event 201 and other things, where they actually told us exactly what was going to happen. They told us what the media was going to sound like. They told us what the marketing was going to sound like. They told us all of these things in advance of this bullshit story of patient one in Wuhan. All of this was theater to get the public to accept the next round of the drug trade. And the next round of the drug trade is genetically modified humans.
I wonder if you could send us some links that we can post in the chat.
Absolutely.
For example, in particular, the various documents that you've referred to that permit you to make those accusations, just so that we can learn together from the brilliant work that you've done in compiling these narratives. I mean, it's extraordinarily significant. So really what you're saying is that many of them, what seemed to be the most outlandish statements that could be located online at the commencement of the pandemic, are closer to the truth than what you would see on the BBC or NBC or the New York Times. How do you tally that with something like the discovery that in Ukraine, through DIA, they are now monitoring and observing Ukrainian transactions and have tied digital identity to the ability to shut down bank accounts, causing some Ukrainian civilians that refuse the conscript to have their assets frozen? Do you think that the control of finance, social credit scores, digital ID are part of this, launch, as you very explicitly said, next phase of the drug phase, genetically engineered or altered humans? Do you think part of that is civilian management through technological dictatorship?
Well, no question. It's not by accident. Dustin Moskowitz, the name I love to mention that nobody seems to ever bother to keep reciting, and I encourage people to do it. But Dustin Moskowitz, the co-founder of Facebook and the guy behind paying for Event 201 and the guy behind paying for a number of other things, including his joint venture with the Wellcome Trust through Syncova and a number of funding sources. This program is about once again, making sure that there is an ability to access a control mechanism on human beings. And by genetically modifying people with mRNA, by doing all sorts of those kinds of manipulations, and then by encouraging things like central bank digital currencies and all of the kinds of things we're supposed to track on our phones, the vaccine passport or the personal identity transactions, all of these things are meant to control and limit the ability for the free association and the free movement of thoughts and ideas in people. If you're going to actually control and manipulate a population, what you have to do is effectively create house arrest for the non-compliant. And it turns out that house arrest for the non-compliant is what I said in my interview in April of 2020. I said this entire program was the launch of the universal house arrest program. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is that by using, by the way, the only tool that can subvert constitutional rights, which is public health. Public health was written into the law as the way of subverting constitutional rights. And using public health as the means to do it, we have been placed under a virtual house arrest, and the technologies that are enabling that are going to be increasingly rolled out, whether it's your 5G, 6G personal identity chips, whether it's the things that you wear, it's the personal devices that monitor your behavior, the personal devices that monitor your health status. These are all meant to effectively be the anklet on your leg for the criminal that you are if you think you are entitled to liberty.
It's extraordinary how many of these measures have been observably introduced through commodity, the normalization of handheld technology, the normalization of biotech, the normalization of monitoring your sleep, monitoring your sugar levels. Do you suggest then that that's a process of familiarization that doesn't require the explicit complicity of the commercial entities involved in the marketing of those products, because they will simply sell a product if it's profitable, and the population will acquire those products if they believe that they are somehow beneficial? But once this infrastructure is in place and once these ideas have been normalized, they can be centralized and used coercively.
Yeah, Russell, let's take a page out of history. I've said many times that the debate between Westinghouse and Edison and Tesla is one that gets nostalgically thrown about as Tesla, this giant libertarian who was a victim of circumstances. People forget that he received several $1 million of funding from JP Morgan. So last time I checked, that doesn't make you a victim of anything. It makes you complicit. But that's me being judgmental, I suppose. But the fact of the matter is, what made electricity normalized, because remember, we used to use whale oil. That's how we used to light our nights. We used to use oils, and we used to use all sorts of other things to actually light our nights. But we started using electricity. But the problem is you couldn't make electricity work until you could do what? Put a meter on the outside of the house. Now, most people don't know that the Triplet Company from Bluffton, Ohio, is the company that figured out how to put a little device on the outside of every house that used to, you remember this when you were a kid, it used to have a little dial that spun on the outside of the house, and it just measured how much electricity was going in the house. It's about metering behavior, because by metering behavior, you can do two things. One, you can extract a tax on the public, whether they're using something or not. That's helpful. And the other thing is you can monitor and manipulate behavior, because if you want to, people are not playing the game, you just shut them off. Right now, an Apple Watch is no different than the power meter on the outside of your house in the 1920s or 30s. It is the monitoring system that you think is innocent and innocuous, but it becomes a permanent taxation and a permanent behavior control mechanism that you actually just blindly went along, walking past it every day going, oh, look at the thing is spinning. Well, it's spinning, yes, but it's also monitoring, manipulating, and controlling your behavior.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to see more uncensored content where free speech can flourish, join our live stream. Click the link right here to watch the next video if you want to, or become a member of a growing movement. Download the Rumble app and you'll be informed every time we make a new piece of content. Stay free.